Night, a very good evening to you, Makosini. Thank you so much for coming in. Let's talk about who these 12 senior officials are that you've suspended and the nature of their alleged misconduct.
Well, these are people who would be at head office in the main. Some are involved in procurement, some are involved in engineering, and they span across, the various regions of PRASA. The allegations that they are facing, the charges that they'll be facing, relate to essentially the malfeasance that has brought PRASA to the sorry state that it is in. It's important for us to remind ourselves that, PRASA is not in the situation that it is in because of the low-level workers or blue-collar workers in the main. It is people who wear suits and ties and people who speak good English. People who you would never think that they would do things that they would bring the organization into the point that it is now, that we have essentially depleted the operational budget, as you're correctly pointing out. So these are people who are senior manager, executive manager level.
Are you able tonight to give us names, titles, positions?
Look, we decided that we're not going to be releasing the names of the people. Internally, yes, we will do that at the right time, but at this time we decided against naming them. But certainly 12 people have been suspended, and we are in the process of, putting together the charges. The disciplinary processes will be starting very soon.
And I read out quite a long list of just how bad the picture is for PRASA currently. No money, you're dealing with what has been years of essentially alleged looting of the state-owned entity. As we sit here tonight, is there a feeling amongst yourselves, as the new guys who've been brought in, along with the administrator, Bongisizwe Mpondo, that you are making progress in trying to clean this up?
Look, the administrator was given 9 priorities. His mandate is a 9-point mandate, which includes what we're talking about today: consequence management, revenue enhancement, and cost reduction. Also working with Transnet to see, because we share a lot of the network with them. So there's a lot of things that he has started doing. He's divided his EXCO into subcommittees that focus on the things that will help him deliver on his mandate. Sitting where I'm sitting, I'm really optimistic that if we were to talk this time next year, would be, certainly we will be talking about a different PRASA. But I think the most important point that I would want to make is that PRASA is not like other state-owned companies that are facing difficulties, in that we're not asking for a bailout. PRASA is not bankrupt. It is only broke. We're sitting with an unspent capital expenditure budget of about 20 billion rand. So we are asking the Department of Transport to intercede on our behalf and talk to Treasury so that we can be able to convert some of that capital expenditure budget into operational expenditure budget, so that we can be able to pay, the number of suppliers that we owe money to. Many people sometimes talk about Eskom, the money that we owe Eskom and the city of Cape Town, but we don't talk about the small, medium and micro enterprises that we owe money to, that if we do not pay them, they actually face complete annihilation.
So I want you to make that make sense for us, right? The people who don't deal with company budgets at the level that you're talking about. You say PRASA is broke but not bankrupt, yet you're sitting with suppliers who are to this day waiting for you to pay. In layman's language,
thank you.
Why do you have 20 billion rand that's sitting in your account, but people who you are unable to pay?
Like, you would have 2 budgets. One budget for capital expenditure, that is for buying new trains, new locomotives, new coaches, building new railway lines, automating the system. So, and you have money also in the operational budget that's for paying salaries, paying for electricity and all those things. So Treasury is very strict, and correctly they have to be strict, that you don't take money that's meant for one thing and use it for another. So the money that the thieves that were running amok at PRASA, they stole money mainly from, the operational budget, and also the degradation of the system, the lowering of, the revenue. If you look, for instance, the previous board that dissolved or cancelled a security contract without any contingency plan, which led to industrial vandalization of our system, then it means trains cannot run, then we don't have, revenue goes down. So we're not not able to pay for the things that we need to pay for. So what we're requesting now is that, because at any rate we wouldn't have the capacity to spend all the 20 billion rands, not in in a financial year anyway, given the how the company was hollowed out. So we're asking that in order to save the company, because we have to do something, in order to save the company, let's move some of the money from the capital expenditure budget into operational expenditure budget, so that we can be able to pay people and keep the organization afloat and improve our cash flow.
I meant to ask you this earlier, sorry. You make that example of the security contracts that had gone wrong. We know there was a termination of some of those agreements. Let's go back then to these 12 senior officials whom you've suspended. What cases of wrongdoing are they linked to specifically? Because you also had issues around the purchase of locomotives, for example, which was quite a big scandal for PRASA.
Yes. Look, I am not very familiar with each individual and what they are accused of, but it's gross misconduct. That is a conduct that has contributed to putting PRASA in a situation where it is. If you're looking at people, for instance, who are in procurement, then you would know, for instance, that that has to do with procurement, maybe issuing of fraudulent tenders and things like that.
Let me ask you this, Makosini. I mean, you suspended these senior officials, but not everyone who was involved in bringing PRASA to this level has left the entity. You've got an administrator in place, Bongisizwe Mpondo. What is the level of cooperation?
We do get cooperation from some of the executives, and some, I must be honest with you, they are actually staging a fight-back campaign. That fight-back campaign finds expression in people questioning the appointment of the administrator. They try to undermine the work that he's doing. Some people have left. Some, when they are facing charges, they decide to resign instead. I think what all of us must be concerned about is that here is a state-owned company that was hollowed out, billions stolen, and not one person has been charged. Not one person is in prison because of that.
But who's to blame for that? The average South African will say, if there is information in writing that links senior officials, executives, to the hollowing of PRASA, why are we sitting here without people who've got a court date soon, people who are at a correctional facility? Why is that?
Look, it's very difficult for me to answer that question, but I'll tell you this. We are working very closely with the Special Investigations Unit, and some of the suspensions that we have effected stem from the investigations that the SIU was doing. We're working very closely with the Hawks, and I'm optimistic that in a not-so-distant future, there are people who are going to be charged. But I think the pace is very slow, and we can understand why people like you would be impatient and people at home would be impatient. We are impatient ourselves.
I suppose the issue then becomes, it's not even about impatience per se, it's just fatigue among South Africans who are tired of hearing the new team at PRASA, the new team at SAA, the new team at Eskom say, we've come in, we're trying to fix, here's what went wrong, and there is evidence of wrongdoing, yet there's no real action beyond people being sent to spend time at home while they await an internal process. And during that time, much of these people are still drawing good salaries.
The administrator of PRASA, Bongisizwe Mpondo, has been in the office only since the 9th of December, and the beginning of January, you lose 2-3 weeks there. We are in March. Already we're suspending 12 people. I think that should send a message that there's a new broom sweeping at PRASA, and that we're not going to tolerate the malfeasance that has been happening at PRASA. And I think the fact that the Minister of Transport and who we are very lucky to have as our shareholder, who's very supportive of PRASA and the programs that it's embarking on, we have placed the organization in a situation where there's an administrator who's been given powers to clean up, and he is cleaning up.
And then just on that cleanup itself, as you sit here tonight, can you confidently say that there was nothing untoward that happened in the appointment of the administrator, because that, as you alluded to earlier, has now become an issue of contention, even coming up at the state capture inquiry from the former PRASA chairperson, Khanyisile Kweyama, and to the cleanup itself, the way in which the administrator is going about his business. Is everything, is everything being done well within the law to avoid all of it backfiring at some point?
I'll answer your question, though I know that my minister, Fikile Mbalula, is going to kick my behind for answering the questions because it's above our pay grade as the people who are at PRASA to
But I have to ask.
The appointment. And I'll tell you, let me put it to you this way. I've personally, sought a legal opinion from people who say, who have told me that the appointment itself was above board. There is no question about that. And there is a court case that's going to be happening in the next few days. And I think the matter will be finally
next week,
decided.
Actually,
yes, the matter will be finally decided there. But until someone says this administrator was not appointed correctly, the administrator has full powers to conduct the business of PRASA, and we are moving ahead in that, informed by that for now and until that is successfully challenged, he is the legitimate administrator of PRASA and is doing his work and is going to continue.
And he's doing things according to the book.
He's doing things according to the book. What people do not know is that the administrator works very closely with Treasury, very, very closely with Treasury. Most of the main decisions, the important decisions that the administrator takes, he takes them with the concurrence of Treasury. Also, the Department of Transport.
The administrator is supposed to be there for 12 months, I believe. The reality is when you look at problems created over half a decade plus, you don't fix that sort of rot in a year.
Look, his mandate is, and the minister says this over and over again, that, the task of Bongisizwe Mpondo, it is really to bring a semblance of stability. Look, this was an organization, if the minister did not take the decision that he took, there was not going to be PRASA by the end of December this year. There really was not going to be any PRASA. If you can see the things that are coming up now, the suppliers that are not paid and all these problems. So you have to bring a semblance of order, and we are confident that there will be the PRASA that we are going to hand over to the new board and the new executive in December. It will be a far better PRASA than the PRASA that we inherited when it took over in December.